Readings is something that I created inspired by two things. One is an experience I had back when I was a playwright many, many, many moons ago. We had Monday night readings at the Playwright Center in Minneapolis. And we would get up in front of a crowd and have to hear criticism of our plays. And then we would go home and we would work on them. That's not what we're doing tonight, but I was inspired by the Monday night feature for that reason. The other reason that I came up with Monday night readings is I work with both nonfiction and fiction authors. And in my fiction world, they're always doing readings. And in my nonfiction world, they're almost never doing readings. And yet nonfiction authors have great stories to tell. So why not do a reading? I feel like you should have the spotlight on you and not just do promo and Q&A and webinars. So tonight you'll be hearing stories from two workshop alums and also probably my original alum, which is Mike Michalowicz, who's here. These are all people that I work with to help write better stories, and you're going to have a great night tonight. This is how it goes. We do a 10-minute reading followed by a very short Q&A. I want all of you to understand the feedback rules we have in workshop, which is you are here to enjoy, to listen, and to give positive feedback. In workshop, I'm the only person who gives constructive criticism. And tonight, I'm not giving any. Tonight, we're just showcasing these beautiful stories. So if you have something you love about the story, if a line resonates with you, if a moment really touches your heart, we'd love for you to note that in the chat just as you're reading. And we save the chat for the authors who are sharing their stories tonight. And it's really special for them to see that feedback after the fact. So we're going to kick off with, we'll be done right at 8 o'clock tonight. So I want to welcome our authors who are reading tonight. We have Ida Rose Florez. You want to wave? We have Liz Long and my brother over there, Mike Michalowicz. Yay, we're so lucky to have Mike here tonight, everybody. So before if you have questions, you can go ahead and put them in the chat. Laura Stone is here. Wave, Laura. She's our Dean of Students, and she'll be happy to handle any questions as well as any tech issues. You'll also see from Laura that she'll be putting in links so you can learn more about the authors and also learn more about how you can get your hands on their books. All right. So we're going to get started with Ida Rose. Laura, you're up with the bio.
Wonderful. And I'm just going to ask as we get started, if you haven't muted and you're not Ida Rose, would you please mute your microphones just so that we can make sure that we have a wonderful video for Ida Rose to have moving forward. Thank you. So Dr. Ida Rose Florez is an education systems psychologist who approaches the world and how people learn through a complexity lens. In her consulting work with governments, nonprofits, and educational organizations, she brings the ability to translate big theoretical ideas into actionable next steps that transcend perceived barriers and discover solutions that work. Her background includes systems development and reinvention at the state and national level. Ida Rose is laser focused on equity and inclusivity. She spent her early years as a pre-K to 12 school psychologist, working on behalf of children with learning difficulties in urban and rural settings. Her more recent work is focused on informing large-scale systems change. Her testimony as an expert witness in the federal Horn versus Florez case led the Arizona Department of Education to overhaul the Arizona English Language Learners Assessment for kindergartners. Dr. Florez is the former vice president of the National Association for the Education of Young Children from 2014 to 2018, and holds a master's degree in school psychology and a PhD in educational psychology. Ida Rose, I'll put how they can connect with you in the chat.
Great, thanks so much, Laura. And thank you, AJ. It's so lovely to be here with everyone. My book is called The End of Education as We Know It, a complexity guide for educational influencers. And it's for readers who see how our society's worldview is damaging people and planet and want to know the most effective ways to influence lasting change. My message is to change society, you got to start with schools. So this is an excerpt from chapter 3 called, So You Want to Change a Paradigm. My oldest kids, George and Carissa, are twins. For first grade, they attended a brand new school in the central Pennsylvania neighborhood where we lived. The day school started, I left work early so I could greet them when they got home. I pulled in our garage with a few minutes to spare and kicked off my pumps inside the back door. Slipping on flats, I turned on the oven, grabbed a tub of cookie dough from the fridge. I heard the school bus squeal to a stop a few houses down, just as I slipped the cookies in the oven. Not homemade, but still a special treat. I went outside and waited in the driveway. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the cul-de-sac. The twins walked past neighboring houses, waving happy goodbyes to their friends. I smiled. My babies were growing up. They turned into the driveway, and their smiles vanished. They stomped past me. How could you do that to us? We were so embarrassed. Inside, their bright little backpacks slipped off their shoulders and dropped to the floor. I headed to the kitchen and pulled the cookies from the oven as they scooched onto stools at the counter. I hoped the issue would show itself quickly. They did not disappoint. Why didn't you teach us the poem? I froze, eyebrows furrowed, warm cookie on spatula mid-air. Poem? What poem? George scoffed. Mom, you don't know the poem? Carissa took the cookie from the spatula. All the kids knew the poem, Mom. Every single one. We were the only ones that didn't. I was flummoxed. Was this a Pennsylvania thing? In California, where I grew up, we had no poem that every first grader knew the first day of school. We had no poem that every child knew at any time of any year. What kind of mother was I not knowing the all-important poem? I kept offloading cookies. Tell me more. What was the poem about? George swallowed his last bite of cookie and chased it with milk. First thing in the morning, all the kids stood up and faced the front of the classroom. Oh dear, oh no. My blender came into crisp view. I stuffed a cookie in my mouth. George continued. They all put their hands on their chests and said the poem. A flag poem. I choked. My kid just called the Pledge of Allegiance a flag poem. Of course he did. How else would an uninitiated 6-year-old think of it? And how could I have forgotten it? Even with everything I'd prepared, their new shoes and haircuts, backpacks and lunch boxes, rearranging my schedule, the milk and cookies, I had failed to give them the ticket in. How did I forget to teach them to pledge the flag? It didn't matter that I checked my list twice. The pledge wasn't on it. It also hadn't been in the curriculum. For preschool and kindergarten, George and Carissa attended a community school run by a group of Mennonites. They didn't drive horse-drawn buggies, nor did they wear old order clothes, but they did hold fast to their deep convictions about the separation of church and state. There were no flags of any kind in their schools. There was no flag poem. This would be a good place for me to pause and talk about the power of cultural symbolism, or ponder how a few sentences come to represent what it means to be patriotic. But in a chapter about shifting paradigms, the most important thing about this story is how utterly I did not see the flag poem coming. Paradigms and the assumptions they generate do that to us. They help us navigate society, but they can also keep us from seeing the pile before we step in it. Their stealth modus operandi is what makes them so handy, but also so resilient to change. Getting to know paradigms and understanding how they keep schools stuck in status quo is one of the most important things we can do if we're serious about reimagining education. But be forewarned, doing so isn't merely about increasing funding or improving curricula. It's about seeing school in a whole new way. What is a paradigm? The term paradigm has been bantered about as so much jargon it's nearly lost all meaning, but it has specific definitions. Science philosopher Thomas Kuhn used it in his 1962 book, The Structure of Scientific Revolutions, to mean the overarching ideas that guide normal, status quo science. Science without disruption, science chugging along as expected, expanding what is already known, but not rocking any theoretical boats. The term also refers to the organized beliefs that so deeply guide a society that the assumptions they generate are rarely questioned and almost always unseen. We're most likely to see these assumptions when we violate them, like when a mom fails to teach her first graders the flag poem. All societies have such assumptions. They consolidate information and allow people in a shared culture to operate automatically from common values. Paradigmatic assumptions, however, also limit our capacity to see possibilities. A few years ago, as I led a community-based project funded by the National Science Foundation, I saw firsthand how assumptions obscure our view of potential. Our team held a community science day focused on engaging girls in a San Diego neighborhood. Sylvia Acevedo, then CEO of Girl Scouts USA, accepted my invitation to join us and share her story. Sylvia grew up in a migrant farm community. Being a Girl Scout gave her the confidence to become a rocket scientist. She joined Jet Propulsion Laboratories as one of their first Latina engineers and helped design NASA rockets. When the community day arrived, Sylvia and I headed to the elementary school in southeastern San Diego where the project was based. Happy voices spilled out from the multipurpose room. Over 100 girls gathered around the cafeteria table strewn with science supplies. All were Latinas. Girl Scout staff and the students' teachers guided the girls through science activities that Scouts do to earn badges. Sylvia and I, along with several community leaders, made our way around the room, marveling at all the girls were doing. Then Sylvia moved to the front and the girls took their seats. You could almost smell the tamales and see the fields ready for harvest as Sylvia talked about growing up in New Mexico. She switched easily between English and Spanish, evoking giggles and knowing nods. I stood toward the back. An influential nonprofit executive walked over and stood next to me. Weeks earlier, I had visited Mike to seek his help with underwriting Scout troops at the school. He had listened politely, then told me I should never have positioned the project where I did because the community was too entrenched in generational poverty. He said the local Girl Scout Council had tried recruiting at that school and there simply was no interest. I was wasting my time and an NSF grant. I had taken a deep, slow breath and then invited him to come see for himself. And to his credit, he showed up. 3 weeks later, we stood side by side as Sylvia wrapped up her story and asked for questions. Dozens of hands flew up. Sylvia pointed to a student. Yes? A girl took the microphone a teacher offered her and asked, "Is Girl Scouts real?" Sylvia furrowed her eyebrows and then looked at me. I shrugged. I had no clue what the girl meant. Sylvia looked back to the child. Could you repeat your question? The girl nodded. Is Girl Scouts real? Sylvia looked at me again. I shrugged again. But just then I remembered a performance art company had recently visited the school and invited children to take part in an improvised play. Was the student asking if Girl Scouts is performance art? Was she asking if the science activities were mere props? Before I could clarify, she did so herself. Is this just a play? Or is it real? Like, could I be a Girl Scout? Another child stood up. Are you going away and never coming back? Or can we do Girl Scouts again tomorrow? The room erupted. Girl Scouts tomorrow. Do Girl Scouts tomorrow. Sylvia laughed and clapped along, then got quiet and looked deeply at the girl with the microphone. Yes, Girl Scouts is very real. And yes, you can be a Girl Scout. Then waving her arm across the room in a giant hug, she said, you can all be Girl Scouts. Until that day, to the children in that room, Scouts was just as likely fantasy as fact. They had never gone with their parents to drop off an older sibling at Brownies, never sold cookies or went on a Scout camp out. Their understanding was shaped by others who could not see their potential. I glanced sideways and saw Mike dabbing at his eyes. The children held assumptions too, of course, but the girl who stood and reached for the microphone did something the power broker at my side had previously failed to do. She sought disconfirming information. She questioned her assumptions, wondering if, just maybe, things might be different than what they seem. Like, could I be a Girl Scout? At its core, Sylvia's story is about how Scouts influenced her before societal assumptions disfigured her understanding of her own potential. Her story helped the girls in that room question unfounded assumptions about themselves and their community. I tell this story to help all of us question the assumptions that have disfigured our understanding about what school could be. And I invite us to wonder together if things just might be different than what they seem. Like, could we have just humane and regenerative schools? Yes, yes, we can.
Woohoo! Yeah. Yes. I love that story so much. I'm so glad you chose to read that. And I've loved seeing it evolve in workshops. So Ida Rose, thank you so much for sharing. I want to ask you, what is the change that you hope to see in the world? I think I know, but tell everybody, because of this book. When this book is out in the world, what change do you hope to see?
I hope to see 100,000 people who understand complexity and what it has to do with education and can speak from a new paradigm and to model different ways of doing education and doing school that ultimately leads us to a changed society.
So just a small thing,
Just a little thing.
just
Right.
a little bitty thing. And tell us about where people can find out more about the book and its progress. I know you're working on it. It's a gorgeous piece of writing so far, and I know that you are still working on it. So where can people sign up to learn more about the book, or where can they find you?
So I believe Laura is going to share and post my LinkedIn link. I'm very, very close to launching a brand new website where there will be an opportunity to sign up for newsletters, and you can connect with me through LinkedIn, and I'll make sure that that's there and that you also can get a link to the new website.
Wonderful. And I really want to know the answer to this question. So what's been something surprising about your author journey?
What has been something surprising about my author journey? I think it's that how important being a part of an author network and an author group, the confidence that it has given me, and the writing practice of just like, you hear it, you know it, right? If you just sit down, put your butt in the seat, crank out the words, it's going to make a difference. And it's really easy to just be like, yeah, right, that works for other people. No, it actually really works. It isn't magic. It's discipline and just habit, habit is a habit.
Yes, and you've all seen the fruits of that today. Ida Rose, I am thrilled for you, proud to know you, proud to help you with this book, and congratulations tonight on a beautiful reading.
Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Of course. So our next reader is Liz Long. Hey, Liz.
Hi, AJ.
Hey, so Laura, you want to introduce Liz for me?
I would love to introduce Liz. Liz Long, born in Burlington, Ontario, Canada, has worn many hats over the years: accountant, business owner, entrepreneur, real estate agent, wife and mother, and now the funniest writer in all of Muskoka, Ontario. And I will say that the competition is surprisingly fierce. Her mission is to help people feel happier and more fulfilled in their lives, to learn how to love themselves by helping them adopt practices of radical self-care. She's the author of the upcoming book, Victim Town, An Unavoidable Destination and the Gifts It Offers. And I will leave a link for how you can connect with her in the chat. Take it away, AJ.
Liz, I love that subtitle so much. That is a really good subtitle. So tell us, who is your reader? What is your core message to that reader, and what is your promise to that reader?
I'm writing for people who are wrestling with the big questions of life. They might be on a healing journey already, or maybe they're feeling lost and yearning for something more. They might have anxiety or depression, or perhaps they're just thinking there's got to be more to life. My core message is that our childhood coping mechanisms are not meant to be permanent. And I wrote this book because it took me 58 years to figure out most of my shit. And that's okay. I definitely don't have everything sorted out, but I've learned a few things that I want to share, things that I hope will help other people figure out their stuff sooner.
And so set up this excerpt for us so we know where is this piece in the book and what do we need to know?
Sure. When I was 6 years old, my favorite aunt, Linda White, disappeared at the age of 19. As my mother moved into the role of crisis management, she completely checked out of parenting. We moved into my grandparents' house, and I grew up in Linda's bedroom. We all endured 5 very long years of not knowing if she was even alive. And today, more than 50 years later, her case remains unsolved. So what I'd like to share is an excerpt from my chapter 4 entitled, "You Did the Best You Could."
All right, Liz, here you go.
Shit happened to all of us when we were kids. And even though we may have lost our way, whatever it was that happened, it really wasn't our fault. It wasn't fair, and we certainly didn't deserve it. No child does. But all the things that happened when we were kids caused us to change. It was impossible for it not to. In order to explain to ourselves why or how anything happened, we imagined stories and we made up meanings with whatever sketchy information happened to be available. The way we figured things out and the meanings we made up completely changed how we thought of ourselves and our perspective of the world, and caused us to act in new and different ways. Our revised behaviors, our coping mechanisms, along with our new beliefs about the world, had one purpose: to protect ourselves from further hurt. I have 7 childhood memories. This story is memory number 3. Not long after my Aunt Linda went missing, a young girl disappeared from the woods right beside my school playground. It happened on the weekend, and she didn't go to my school, but she was the same age as me, and it happened in the same woods that my friends and I played in every day at recess. While my brother and I were still at the dinner table, my parents were talking with each other about this new development, and they remembered something. They said that Marianne Schuett still hadn't been found. Who was that? Listening to them, I learned that a year ago, a 10-year-old girl named Marianne got into a car after her school let out, and she was never seen again. Her school was only 9 miles away. I remember sitting at the table thinking, what? It's not just my Aunt Linda and the girl in the woods? Another girl got taken last year too? This may sound hard to believe, but it's all true. My father started walking a group of us neighborhood kids the 3 blocks to school every morning with a pitchfork. It completely boggles my mind that we even owned such a thing. And I guess it must have been the only tool in our shed that could be used for protection. The risk of getting snatched, however, had just become even more real. All the kids were scared, but nobody was more afraid than me, because I knew firsthand that it didn't just happen to other people. I don't actually remember walking with the pitchfork. That part was told to me by the other kids and also by my dad. What I do remember is being terrified. I was terrified to be alone every single time I left my house. Going to school was a non-negotiable. In my classroom, I started looking around. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There are 36 kids here. Whew, that's a lot. If I can just stay really small and quiet and not do anything to stand out, if the snatcher shows up here, hopefully he won't see me. It's not that I wanted anyone else to disappear. I really didn't, but that's how the voice in my head worked back then. My refusal to leave the safety of the classroom also meant that I would not even go to the washroom, not ever, not even at lunch. Too embarrassed to ask the teacher if a friend could go with me, I was ashamed. I didn't want to tell people why I was such a scaredy cat. And it was a very long day until school let out at 3:45 in the afternoon. One winter day, when the last bell finally rang, I had to go to the bathroom really, really badly. I don't know why, but nobody was ever around to walk us home. Instead, each of our parents gave us instructions. Whatever you do, stay together. Make sure you come straight home. Don't dilly-dally and don't talk to anyone. Pay attention and keep your wits about you. I debated about staying with the group like I was supposed to, but my bladder was about to burst. And they all walked so slowly. Anyway, we were just a group of kids. We didn't even have a spoon, let alone a pitchfork. The way I figured it, running by myself as fast as I could the whole way, well, that was my best option. I happened to be wearing a brand new outfit. Dark green polyester pants with a seam right down the center of each leg to the coolest bell-bottom flare ever. My plaid top was a perfect match. I was styling. But the voice in my head was growing concerned about something else. Oh my gosh, I have to go so bad. This is not good. And a different voice showed up. It'll be okay. Just run your fastest and don't look back. So I took off at lightning speed, holding on to the handle of my school bag for dear life. I raced down the sidewalk. I couldn't help but look over my shoulder every few steps, and after only 2 blocks, I could barely breathe. As I rounded the last corner, I could see my house, yay! But it was still more than a block away. Afraid that I was not going to make it, I pretended I was on the track team with a coach on the sidelines yelling at me, run faster, Long. And I did. Somehow I found even more energy and I was able to pick up the pace, but that extra effort expended for that gain in speed, let's just say it wasn't the best move. It began to compromise my ability to hold in the pee. It started with a few drips. I could feel each one slowly rolling down the inside of my legs, separately chasing that fateful drop that led the way. I slowed down to a jog, hoping to get a grip, as they say, to stop the flow. But as any girl knows, once that dam breaks, it is damn hard to stop. The pee continued to roll, quickly becoming an unstoppable stream and gaining in velocity down both legs. Oh no, I hope it doesn't show. With my shitty luck, it was cold out, freezing cold, January in Canada cold. I'm talking bobsled to the grocery store cold. And I wished desperately for the safety and privacy of my house. The faster I ran, the more I peed. Oh, my best school clothes are ruined. It didn't take long for the pee to soak right through the fabric of my green polyester pants, and what followed was like a freakish science experiment. As the warm pee met the frigid winter air, the result was disastrous. Gusts of urine-spelling steam began to rise up all around me. Ew, yuck, what is happening? I felt like Linus from Charlie Brown, and I started to cry. You'd think that was bad enough, but the science experiment was about to enter phase 2. My fancy pants with the pleat down the middle, those pants, they began to get brittle, and then they froze solid. I could barely move my legs. Hell was freezing over. My run mutated into this weird, happy-go-lucky, straight leg swinging of the sides kind of movement. I must look like an idiot, I thought. Why couldn't I live in Florida? As my wet skin rubbed and chafed against the frozen fabric, my legs felt like they were on fire, which made no sense at all. I glanced down, no flames, but my legs were burning and I had frozen tears on my face. Oh, I can't think about this right now. And I didn't have to, because I've arrived. I made it. Back in my warm house. I'm melting. My pants are melting. I'm unsnatched and I'm grateful, but I still don't feel safe. That day, in 1968 changed my life. It was the beginning of a long and complicated expedition, an expedition to reclaim my voice and find my place in the world. Thank you.
Yes, Liz. Woo! You're so good. You're such a great storyteller. Oh, such a great storyteller and such an important
Thank you.
message. Thank you, Liz. So tell me, what is the change you hope to see in the world because of this book?
I hope that through my book and the workshops that I'll offer online, that people will be able to find a way to love themselves without limits or conditions and reconcile their childhoods.
Again, just little goals we have here in workshop. I'm so proud of you. What's been surprising about your author journey, Liz?
I'm surprised, AJ, that, and thanks to your writing palooza, I still get up at 5:30 in the morning to write, and I actually look forward to it.
Yeah, you should. You're a gifted and talented writer. You have the rare ability to take something devastating, to take the hard stuff and make us laugh out loud. And that is a gift to the reader, to be able to take in this deep stuff you're telling us, to face our own stuff and laugh our way through it. And you've truly talented. I can't wait for this book. So we have to wait for the book because you're in the process of finishing it, but tell us how we can make sure we know when it comes out.
Yes, it's not scheduled to be available until almost the end of next year. But in the meantime, you can find me at lizlongwrites.com and sign up there to be kept updated.
Amazing. I am so proud of you, Liz. And thank you for sharing your wonderful story tonight. And I also love seeing all my students here who are in the current cohort. I hope that Ida Rose and Liz have inspired you as you work on your first drafts. So thank you again, Liz. All right, next up, my buddy Mike. Hey, Mike.
Hey, AJ.
So some of you may know that Mike and I have been writing together for, I think it's about 13 years now.
Correcto.
Yes, on all of Mike's books. A few of them are behind me. I don't have room for all of them if I face them all out. And we just wrapped, or we're in the middle of, we didn't wrap it. We're in the middle of another book for next year, yeah?
That's correct, yeah.
Yeah. We're working on a book all the time. When we finish one book, before we finish one book, we start on the next one for sure. So Mike, tonight we're talking about Get Different though, which is a book that came out earlier this year, Wall Street Journal bestseller. And can you share a little bit about who is your reader and what is your message in Get Different?
You don't want his bio?
Oh, doesn't everybody know Mike? Yes, Laura, please cue Mike up.
Mike, allow me to pump your tires for just a moment.
Sure.
You're welcome.
32 pounds PSI, please.
You got it. Often confused with Russian ballet wunderkind Michalowicz. That is not this person. This is Mike Michalowicz, a mediocre dancer on point, but an absolute legend on a wedding dance floor, particularly with the electric slide. He is the entrepreneur behind 3 multi-million-dollar companies, and along with co-author AJ Harper, wrote Profit First, Clockwork, The Pumpkin Plan, Fix This Next, and their latest, Get Different. Mike is a former small business columnist for the Wall Street Journal and regularly travels the globe as an entrepreneurial advocate. He is an unlicensed spokesman for Traeger Grills and a very nice man, according to his mother, who could not be reached for confirmation before tonight's events. And you can connect with Mike at mikemichalowicz.com.
Wait a
This
minute.
is the best bio ever.
Did you write that, Laura? Oh man, props. You got to send that on to him. I do want to qualify though that although Mike and I write together, these are all his stories and all his ideas, and they are 100% Mike's books. Mike, talk about Get Different.
Sure. So the reader, or whom I'm trying to serve, is the entrepreneurial community, but what I classify as underdog entrepreneurs. These are entrepreneurs stuck in the struggle in some capacity. They had a vision that's not coming true. And Get Different the reason we wrote it is that to provide them with a system to get noticed. The message is that we entrepreneurs have a responsibility to get attention, the responsibility to get noticed if we have something that is of value. And that's what this book hopefully delivers.
I think it does.
I think so.
Yeah. So set up the excerpt. It's actually pretty easy to set up, but
Yeah, so this is from chapter 1. It's your responsibility to market. My little disclaimer is it feels a little bit like The Moth with 2 amazing stories, Ida and Liz, that just delivered. Like, who knew that a soft cookie on a spatula would compete with a frozen pea leg? But it does. And this is going to be my journey into my own responsibility to market. You ready? Chapter 1, and this is the book right here. Your responsibility to market. I did inhale. Yannick Silver blew a cloud of pot smoke right in my face. I had only one option: breathe it in. I never anticipated that my greatest lesson in marketing would come during a game of billiards capped with a ganja exclamation mark. It was the contact high that lasted a lifetime. Yannick is considered by many to be the godfather of internet marketing. He helped innovate the use of email marketing in the early days when people still looked forward to hearing AOL's iconic "You've got mail." Back when people thought an innovative website was one with an animated under construction GIF, he pioneered long copy sales pages with professional product images and clear action or call to action buttons. Yannick's marketing savvy yielded the company of his dreams, Maverick 1000. He created a global network as a manifestation of his life's purpose to help support visionary entrepreneurs grow their businesses and have a bigger impact on the world. I just launched my first book, The Toilet Paper Entrepreneur. And I bought into the belief that a great book will sell itself. Hook, line, hook, line, and sinker. I believed it so much that I feared I'd run out of copies during the first month. After all, if you build it, they will come, right? So I scratched together money through friends, emptied my break only in case of an extreme emergency savings account, and ordered 20,000 hardcover copies, all of which are now sitting in a fulfillment center gathering dust. My book launch flopped. On release day, I sold 0. Zippo, nada, zilch. Do you feel me? My own mother didn't buy a copy of the book that day. Hashtag ouch. Defeated, I had 2 choices: learn how to market effectively fast or abandon my dreams. But where to begin? The strategies touted by some successful marketers at the time nauseated me. Marketing online by 2005 had become so commonplace, people doing it had a title: info marketers. At least their faces, they were called info marketers. Behind their backs, the smarmy ones were called names I won't repeat here. You know the ones I'm talking about. Some guy stands in front of a private jet that isn't his, on a tarmac that he snuck onto, leaning on a new Bentley, which he rented for a few hours, and promises you the world. Their methods were gross and inauthentic at best, manipulative and predatory at worst. Yannick's always played a bigger game beyond the tactic of the month. He did not need to prove he knew his stuff with disingenuous pictures and messaging. Yannick marketed authentically, genuinely, really. And that is why I sought out his advice. I desperately wanted people to notice my book. So I didn't want to use those gross info marketers tactics. So instead, I had tried to follow book marketing checklists and all the way all traditional authors are told to market. Send out a press release, throw a launch party, start a blog, get a big name endorsement, and yet all my efforts failed to generate anything beyond onesie-twosie book sales. Twisting my cue stick, I shared my frustration with my new confidant. 5-ball, corner pocket. Moving through the table with ease, Yannick called out shots, and the balls rolled into the pockets at his every command, all the while listening intently to my story. He capped the game by sinking the 8 so perfectly that the cue ball slowly rolled back to the exact spot for the start of the next game. Meanwhile, I stood off to the side like a potted plant that overshares its story of struggle, but a potted plant nonetheless. The game finished. Yannick motioned for me to grab my beer and head outside to the deck with him so that we could overlook the rolling hills in Maryland. After what felt like one of those way too long dramatic crescendo movie moments, he asked, "Is your book better than the stuff everyone else writes?" Yes. Does your book serve the reader better than those info marketers? Hell, yes. It's everything I know. It will serve entrepreneurs. If customers buy the info marketer stuff and don't buy yours, what will happen? They will be swindled, Yannick. My book is better than all that crap. I really believe that to my core. Yannick smiled, as though I'd given him the answer to what he wanted. Then you have a goddamn responsibility to outmarket them. Whoa. On the little table next to him, Yannick started rolling a joint. If people are buying shit, he continued, it may be their problem, but it's your fault. Despite the warm weather, chills ran down my spine. He was right. It was my responsibility. And if I felt I had a viable alternative to the crappy business advice out there, it was my own damn fault if people didn't know about it. Yannick let me sit with the truth bomb he just dropped as he finished rolling his joint. Then he said, people will buy. That is not the question. But they can only ever buy what they are aware exists. If your solution is better, you have to make them notice. Then he took a hit off the joint and inadvertently blew the smoke right into my face. It was a profound moment. I breathed it all in, including the ganja cloud. Yannick leaned back in his chair and contemplated the horizon. Mike, what's your greater why? My greater why? What do you mean? Why are you here on this planet? What impact are you meant to have on our world? Damn, bro. I just wanted to sell some books, and Sensei Yannick wanted to tell me the meaning of life. Then again, who am I to question a marketing savant? Maybe a superior force intervened. Maybe in my heart, I'd always known the answer, or maybe it was just the weed. But then I uttered the words that I've used ever since to find my life's purpose. The words that get me out of bed each morning and drive the long, hard days. The words that jack me up before every speech I deliver. The words that guided me as I feverishly wrote this book for you. I am here to eradicate entrepreneurial poverty. And you can see behind me, my life's purpose is in every room of my where I work. My office here, my office at work. That's my greater why. Entrepreneurial poverty, Yannick said, as if testing the words out on his tongue. I shifted in the edge of my chair. Yes, I believe entrepreneurs change the world. They are innovators and problem solvers. They can fix some of our biggest issues, and yet most of them are just getting by. If I could help business owners get out of the entrepreneurial poverty, they would be free to do those big things, the big things the world is starving for. Yannick took another hit off the joint and said, then that's all that matters. If your books will help you achieve your greater why and they serve entrepreneurs best, you must find a way to market them better than anyone else. My call to arms began with a contact high. Yours happens right now. Your mission to market isn't about you alone. It is about something much, much bigger. It is about you, your family, your community, our world. If you offer something that serves, you must make everyone aware. We need you, but we don't know you exist. And that not knowing you exist part is your responsibility to fix, starting immediately. Quick, name something you do better than the competition. Are your services more thorough? Do you provide a better customer experience? Are you more available to your clients? Does your product last longer? Does your stuff make your client feel better than your competitors? Do you understand the client's needs better? Maybe there are multiple areas that you are a winner. I suspect you're able to identify at least one better pretty darn fast, probably multiple. So it is very likable. It is likely verifiably true that you are better. And if your offer is better than the alternatives in any single way, you shouldn't try to market to your prospects. You must market to them. You have a responsibility to beat competitors, big and small companies alike, the unscrupulous companies, the companies who give less, and the companies who care less than you do about the people you serve. Otherwise, you're letting your customers get ripped off. You have a responsibility to treat your customers and prospects right by marketing the hell out of your company. And if you have a better option for your clients and prospects, yet they don't know it exists, they are forced to settle. That may be their problem, but it is your responsibility to fix. That's Get Different.
Yeah. Woohoo. I love listening to you read it, especially live. So Mike, I know the answer, but share with everybody, what is the change you hope to see in the world because of this specific book?
Yeah. So this specific book is for small businesses to get noticed, particularly small businesses that offer something better in some capacity, some way than the generic and the large competition out there, the ones who don't care in the same way. And I'm hoping to support small business in getting discovered.
So everybody here, Laura's put in the chat a link to purchase Get Different and also a link to connect with Mike. It would be such a great help to us, to Mike, if you would consider purchasing a copy. And I would say that if oh, we've got a copy, we've got Sarah's holding her copy up.
Nice, Sarah.
To get her copy. Janice has been talking about Get Different all week long. I think Janice recently finished reading it. There's Janice's copy. She's holding it up. The reason why it would serve us is not just because book sales are awesome and because Amazon sees a bunch of people buy books at the same time and does nice things. It's because ultimately, this is the book that really helps people figure out how to stand out. And Mike, I want to just add this one question because I have you here, which is such a great honor to have you at Monday night. This book is really, I mean, all of your books are your life's work, but this is something unique to you about the way you think about marketing. I mean, I just think you're shameless in your approach. You're shameless and fearless. You'll do anything. But I feel like the book, we really worked hard to make sure that even people who were introverted or scared or shy or worried about taking a risk could find their way through to stand out. So can you speak to that? Because I know that was really important to you.
In other authors standing out and speaking out?
Well, any business or authorship applies.
Yeah, what's going through my head right now is author specifically. It's been wonderful to be on the other side, being able to help some authors, because I was on the side prior to that. And I remember the very first book when I came out and I launched it, and my own mother didn't buy a book, which my mother's a very kind woman. She just didn't know I was launching. That's how bad my organization was in my planning. But a guy named Barry Moltz, an author, said, "I'll support you." And that's when I realized that authorship is a collective sport. It's like no other business. Is the more successful your book is, the more people want to read books. And that's a win for all of us. So I feel very much on a mission to help authors stand out and get noticed. Writing is really hard. Marketing is really harder, and it's necessary. I've had one final thought on this. I've had a wonderful journey with the popularity of my books to travel the globe and speak in all different countries. And I remember a joke that really isn't a joke, but it does speak a truth that I think we can change. I was in Europe, and this one person says, "Oh, do you know how you hide a secret from an American?" I said, "No." They said, "You put it in a book." I was like, ooh. And I said, "That's right. There's a truth to that." And I think it's our responsibility to write books like what Ida read this evening, and Liz, my gosh, I'm still giggling inside and connected, that we have to elevate books like those. We have a responsibility to market, because those stories will catch on and change the paradigm.
And I just want, speaking of Get Different, what I love so much about it's my favorite book that we've ever worked on. I mean, it's favorite, favorite of all time. Yeah. And it's because I feel like you solved it. You solved that factor for people. I mean, I'm actually the reader this time. And just how do I do that when I really don't like marketing and I don't like standing out and I don't want to be anybody to be pointing at me and I don't want to be judged and I don't want anybody to think I'm silly. And you really cracked it. You really made it accessible for people. This is the system. This is why it works. This is how you do it. So that's why I'm so proud of this book, because I feel like it's for everyone else that can't automatically do those big, bold things that honestly come naturally to you, Mike. So it comes naturally to you, but you help the rest of us figure it out in that book. Because you could have just written a book like, this is what you have to do. And you just have to copy me. And you just have to be fearless. And you just have to do silly stuff. But you didn't do that. Can you just speak to that quickly?
Yeah, sure. I don't know if I ever told you this little vignette. And for all the authors here, maybe you experienced something similar. You know, when you write a book, reading a book is part of the journey too, right? The Audible edition, you could hire a professional or so forth. And, you know, the lesson is read your own book because you put the inflection, the understanding in. I'm an inefficient, ineffective reader. So you heard me stumble and bumble and repeat my words. And that was me trying to be really, really disciplined. I went into New York to read Profit First. And before me, the reader that came out was a guy named Michael J. Fox. Came out of the studio. He had written a biography. And I came in and I was like, is that like Michael J. Fox, like the celebrity? And the producer's like, oh, yeah. He just finished his book. And so I read later on, and I was just so curious. I said, hey, how's my reading compared to Michael J. Fox? And she said, well, Michael J. Fox is like a thoroughbred. I mean, I'll never forget her words. She's like, he wants to be whipped and he runs harder and faster. I go, what am I like? She's like, kind of like a Clydesdale. You kind of come clopping through and just kind of think, but you're kind of a workhorse and you'll just keep on clopping and we can deal with that. And I think the lesson is for all of us, whatever we do in life, is really just to lean into our natural self instead of trying to clone or play into someone else, like be more of that Clydesdale that you are, and good things can come out of it. So
I love that. And I think that was demonstrated tonight in Ida Rose's story and in Liz Long's story. They're more of themselves. They're authentic to their voice shines. It's consistent throughout. And they just lean in to who they are, what they're into, what they geek out about, what they think is funny. And I think that's a winning proposition. So the last thing I'll ask you is, what's been surprising about your author journey, Mike?
I guess surprising, perhaps the thirst I have to read. I never anticipated that. Like I always liked to read. Now I am so thirsty, and it makes no sense. Like, you know, what we do is we write so much, but I'm reading in a volume I've never read before in my life because I just love other people's books so much. So that's surprising. I never expected I'd read more when I was writing more.
I think that's a great insight. And I hope everybody here will read the books that you heard about tonight. Ida Rose and Liz are working so hard to get their books out into the world. And I don't want you to forget about them. So please, as a reminder, connect with Liz on her website, connect with Ida Rose on LinkedIn, and soon enough, you'll know what her website is. Remember them. Remember to stay connected so you know when their books come out. Because if you don't need their book, if you don't need Get Different, someone you know needs it. And so one of the best things you can do is pass that gift along. The gift of a book is the best gift of all, for sure. So this is Monday Night Reading, everybody, and I hope that you enjoyed it. I hope you learned some things. I hope you were inspired. I hope you thought of someone you know who needs one of these books. And also remember that we'll be back in January, on the first Monday night in January. But I want to thank you again, Ida Rose. Thank you again, Liz. Thank you again, Mike, of course. And I hope you all have a wonderful, wonderful holiday season. Bye, everyone.